Bonjour, welcome to Wahsa Citizens Education Center's radio Zoom classes. This is MEL3E, grade 11 workplace math, and I'm the teacher, Bronwyn Slate. If you'd like to participate live, today you can call the Wahsa studio at 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017. You can listen on the radio at 91.9 FM and also on the television at Bell Express View Channel 972. You're always welcome to join me live through the Zoom link, which is available from both me, your teacher, and also your DEC. Our classes are scheduled from Monday through Thursday, 9 till 10 in the morning, and we are wrapping up our 8th week of our 9-week course. So a reminder of what work to submit for marking. The support questions, the ones with the pencil icon, are not for marking. You decide which ones and how many to do. If you are understanding a concept, feel free to skip a question. You don't need to do it just because it's there. But if you also need more practice, also feel free to ask me. I'm happy to send you more practice. The key questions, the ones with the key icon, these ones you need to do all of them. These ones are the ones to submit for marking. So make sure you do all the questions, show all your work, your steps, and your thinking. This way I can truly understand what it is that you understand. And if you're making an error, then I can help you fix it. So then how do you actually submit your work for marking? There's 3 methods. The first is to scan your work and set it in electronically. You can scan your completed work in through using a device. If you have an Apple device, you can use the Notes app. And if you have an Android device, you can use the Google Drive app. Both apps come with the devices generally, though they are downloadable for free. And they're fairly straightforward point and click for scanning. I have some tutorials on my tech tutorial part of my YouTube channel, so you can go and check it out there if you're not sure how to do it and you want to watch video, or feel free to ask and I'm happy to help you. Then once you have it scanned, send it to either email to studentwork@nnec.on.ca and CC it to me, broadwood.slate@nnec.on.ca, or you can also send it to me through Facebook Messenger, where my profile name is B Slate Wahsa. The second method is to drop your work off in Sioux Lookout. We have an outdoor mailbox at our location 74 Front Street. We're the bright red building next to the post office, and we have a small white mailbox next to our side entrance. The third method is to hand your work into your DEC. Your DEC can either send your work through the Express or fax it to 807-737-1732 or toll-free fax to 1-800-463-7852. If you'd like to connect with me through social media, both my Facebook and my YouTube channel under the name B Slate Wahsa. So that is the easiest way to get a hold of me and to find my material. You can friend me on Facebook or subscribe to my YouTube channel. This way you get notifications every time I upload one of our videos. All of our radio Zoom classes are recorded and then uploaded to YouTube shortly after airing. I also have short videos that explain common errors or confusing concepts on my channel. So it's a good place to go if you're struggling with something. You can check those out, and then it's easier to find what it is that you might be looking for. Math is a really visual subject, so I strongly encourage you to access the videos either by joining us live through Zoom, even if you're watching and not talking, totally fine, or watching the YouTube videos on your own time. If you don't have access to reliable internet, let me know and I'm happy to send you a copy of the recordings so that you still get the full experience and set yourself up for the most success. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact me. My email address is bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca. My Facebook is B Slate Wahsa. You can call me at the office at 807-737-1488, extension 2209, or toll free at 1-800-667-3703. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., though I teach right now from 9 to 11 in the morning, so I'm not available at that time. All right, this is our last Throwback Thursday lesson. We're going to be covering focusing on the materials from lessons 16 through 20, though we're going to go back and just touch base on everything. And then next week, we are reviewing the entire course again, just to make sure that we're all on the same page to set you up for success for your culminating assignment. So, why do we review so frequently? Well, the research by Hermann Ebbinghaus in 1885 shows us that we forget things. Our brains forget things really quickly. We do not retain information. So after about one day, we've forgotten about 20% of the material that we learned a day previously. And that continues to happen until about a week later, we've lost about 60% of the material that we learned a week ago. So that's not super great for learning things. But his study also showed that if we continue to revisit and review that material, so like filling our tank back up to 100%, we then not only remember more because we keep revisiting it, but it also takes us longer to forget it. We retain it for a longer period of time. So this just means that if we continue to develop those pathways in our brains about a certain material, then our brains are going to be like, oh, this is important. I need to hold on to this information. And then you don't forget it as fast. So this is why we keep reviewing and going over everything from the beginning to now. But first, let's activate our brain and do some mental math. I'm a firm believer that mad math minutes are stressful and not helpful. So I do not encourage such things as they just cause anxiety and generally hatred for math. And they don't actually focus on the skills that math is attempting to develop, math classes are attempting to develop. So instead of doing those sorts of things, we do a little bit of time developing strategies that we can use in various situations that help us understand and use friendly numbers that are logical for ourselves. So our question today is a big one. 8,979 divided by 246. I want to show you something that was really quite unfriendly, that just looks daunting, so that we can see how we can use these strategies with numbers that are quite large. So we're going to use the strategy of partial quotients. This is my favorite division strategy. It's what makes the most sense for me. But of course, you do you, what makes the most sense for you. This is the one we're going to practice though right now. So we have 8,979, and we're going to put that under the division, the long division symbol, and we're going to do this extended long tail. So it's kind of like a big 7 around our number, and then 246 on the outside. So what we're really trying to find out is how many groups of 246 fit into 8,979, or if we divide 8,000, if we share 8,979 things among in groups of 240, how many groups do we actually get? So with this, we want to do things in friendly numbers. So these numbers automatically do not look friendly to me, but I can say, well, 10 groups is going to be probably the friendliest that I can deal with. So 10 groups of 246 things is going to share out 2,460 things. So I've already, with 10 groups, I've taken care of 2,460 things. So I'm going to subtract those off of the original amount that I have. So 2,000 take away, 8,000 take away 2,000 is 6,000. 900 take away 400 is 500. 770 take away 60 is 10. And 9 take away 0 is 9. So now I have 6,519 things. So I can see, well, another 10 groups are still going to fit in there. So I'm going to do another 10 groups, because that is a friendly number for me. So that if I do another 10 groups, that's 2,460 again. And I'm going to have to subtract that off. Now this time my subtraction isn't as friendly as I want it to be. So I'm going to sort of think to an aside. I'm going to ignore the thousands, and I'm just going to look at 519 take away 460. That's the part that's a little bit tricky. So if I think about this, well, 519 is really close to 520. And I know that 60 is half of 120. So if I do 520, take away 60, that's going to leave me with 400. And then if I take away 400, that's going to leave me, sorry, with 460. So that if I take away 400, then I'm going to have just 60. Sorry, my brain's a little fuzzy today. I am battling a cold. So if what that means is that if I'm really taking away 519, take away 460. So that means that I'm going to have one more left over. So really, or I would have to take away one more. So it's 59. So 6,519 take away 2,460 is going to be 4,059. So again, I can see that 10 groups still fits in there. So I'm going to do another 10 groups. So another 2,460. So again, my subtraction isn't super lovely. So I'm going to think about, well, sorry, my brain is really fuzzy. So I'm just going to subtract it because I'm feeling sick. And sometimes you just need it to use a calculator. The calculator hates me too. So it's 1,599. There we go. So now we can see that that is not another 10 groups, but it's going to be another 5 groups. So 5 groups is half of 2,460. So 1,230. So we're going to subtract that and we're going to get 369. And then we can say, okay, well, I don't have 5 groups left, but I still can fit one group in there. So if I take one group, that's 246 away. So that's 133. 23, not 33. And then here I can look and I say, well, 123, I can't fit any more full groups, but I can fit half a group. I can do half a group of 246, and that's 123. And so that's going to give me, I have nothing left over. So then in total, I have 10, 20, 30, 5, 36, 36 and a half groups. So 8,979 divided by 246 is 36.5 groups. And that's how you use partial quotients. All right, so let's go over the highlights of what we've covered so far, as in everything, because we've covered everything now. First, unit 1. So in lesson 1, we talked about earning an income, where we focused on salary, which is when we get paid a certain amount for this whole year, but then it's broken up into smaller payments, like biweekly or monthly payments, something that you get consistently throughout the year. Piecework is when we get paid for the work based on the job that we're doing. So it's plowing a driveway or selling something like selling a moccasin. You're selling it per moccasin, things like that. And then we looked at job advertisements, just to understand where to find them and what they mean so that you can apply to jobs. In lesson 2, we looked at commission and hourly rates. So commission is when you get paid a percentage of your sales. So that percentage is set based on your industry, based on your employer, based on your position. So it really ranges. But you get paid a certain percentage of your total sales. And that's how you earn your income. Often, when you're working commission, you get paid a base rate, which is might be lower than minimum wage or might be lower than the standard rate in your industry, because you're also getting paid commission on top of that based on the number of sales that you make. Then we also talk about hourly rates, which is when you get paid per hour. So the number of hours you work, you get paid a certain rate for each hour. And in Ontario, the minimum wage now is $15.50 for adults. This just went up at the beginning of October. So at the beginning of our course, it was $15 an hour. Now it's $15.50. If you are doing your work and you still use $15 as minimum wage, that's totally fine. I recognize that has changed, so no worries. Then overtime we talked about, in terms of if you are working over your standard hours, you get paid more. You get paid generally time and a half, which is 1.5 times your hourly rate for those hours that are extra over what you're usually supposed to work. In lesson 3, we looked at gross and net pay. So gross is your total income that you calculate based on however rates you are paid and the total number of hours that you work, or the entire income that you take in. But then your net income is how much you actually take home, because there are standard deductions that all employers take off of your paycheck in order to pay into our societal fund that takes care of all of us as a community. So the standard deductions are Canadian pension plan, which means that when you reach a certain age, you can apply for Canadian pension plan and you can get money back, even though you are working less or not working at all. You can then also EI, employment insurance. So if you get laid off or you work seasonally or you are on parental leave, then you potentially are qualified for getting EI, which means that you get a certain payment because you cannot be working not through no fault of your own. And then income tax is also part of your standard deduction, that for both federal and provincial income tax, or to get taken off of your check, so that you are paying into our government fund, which pays for our politicians, but also pays for things like education, healthcare, national defense, police, libraries, road maintenance, fire departments, all sorts of these things all come out of our taxes. All of these services that you don't have to pay for are based because they come out of our tax system. And then we talked about monthly expenses and how to sort of plan a budget and take into account everything that you are spending in a month. In lesson 4, we looked at paying taxes, and this one was broken up into 2 videos. We looked at the tax paperwork and how you actually file taxes. And we also, in that lesson, looked at hidden taxes, things that we don't necessarily realize there's taxes on, or certain taxes on, in terms of jewelry, cigarette, and gasoline. Then we also looked in detail about tax brackets, where we think about them as pockets, in terms of you fill up one pocket, and then when that pocket is full, then the rest of your money goes into the next pocket. And that's how tax brackets work in Ontario, in Canada. Then in lesson 5, we talked about making purchases, where we talked about making change with the fewest coins possible, as this is generally the easiest way. We generally don't want to be carrying a lot of coins around. We talked about sales tax in terms of PST, GST, and HST. And then we talked about discounts and how to estimate total costs, so that you don't have to feel like you have to calculate everything exactly. You can, having an estimation gives you a rough idea, and that might give you enough information. All right, moving on to Unit 2, we looked at Lesson 6, which is buying decisions. So we talked about unit price, which is often thought of as the best buy, because you're getting the same amount of stuff for the least amount of money. We talked about incentive programs and how various companies might encourage you to spend money at their company. And we talked about currency conversion, focusing specifically on Canadian to US dollars and back and how that works. In lesson 7, we looked at simple interest and how when you are investing or borrowing with simple interest, you are only calculating interest on the principal. So the amount that you start with, either the amount that you borrowed initially or the amount that you are investing initially. And the formula is I equals PRT, where P is your principal, R is your rate as a decimal, and T is your time per years. And I is the amount of money that you've actually, the interest that you've earned or owe. Then to find the total amount, you do your principal plus your interest. In lesson 8, we connected simple interest to compound interest, and we experienced how simple is only calculated on the principal, whereas compound interest is calculated both on the principal and the accumulated interest. So any interest that you've already earned or you already owe, then your compound interest continues to be calculated on that. We use spreadsheets. We looked at Google Sheets and Excel sheets to figure out how to relate these two things. A reminder that if you do not have access to a computer or to these programs with the internet, let me know and I can send you an alternative lesson that you can, instead of getting 0 for the lesson, you can just interpret the information opposed to having to do all of the calculation just because you don't have access to a computer. It's not fair for you to get 0 on that lesson. Then in lesson 9, we looked at compound interest closely. So remember, this is calculated on both the principal and interest. And we figured out the formula, which is A equals P times 1 plus R divided by N to the exponent NT. And P again is our principal, R is our rate in a decimal, N is the number of compounding periods, so how often you compound, and T is your number of years, your time in years. So that might need to be accommodated based on if your time is actually given to you in years. And then for this one, to figure out the total interest that you are paying or are earning, you have to take the total amount because that calculation gives you the total amount and subtract the principal from it to figure out just the interest. Then in lesson 10, we looked at banking transactions, particularly looking at accounts, checkings and savings accounts, figuring out what might be the best option for you. We talked about transaction types and codes. We looked at online banking and talked about how when you're using an automatic teller machine, so when you're using an ATM, that there's always fees associated with that. So to be really careful just taking money out of an ATM, because depending on the type of ATM, you might be getting charged exorbitant fees. Then looking at unit 3, in lesson 11, we talked about credit cards, how to apply for one, how to choose a credit card, and the true costs of borrowing. So how much does it really cost you? What is the benefits? And how to be smart about using your credit card. Then in lesson 12, we talked about loans, various types of loans, and then we all like personal loans or lines of credit. Then we talked about payday loans and cash checking services, as these are dangerous and you end up losing a lot of money. So that just to be wary of them. We talked about the cost of loans and how to make it cheaper for you. And we talked about amortization and how you can look at a schedule that tells you how much money that you are paying goes towards your principal and how much goes towards your interest. In lesson 13, we looked at licenses and insurance. So we explored the graduating license system in Ontario. We learned about demerit points. So if you are making poor choices and not following the law, this is part of the system where you are tracked so that you potentially have your license suspended or completely taken away. We also talk about speeding tickets and victim service charges in terms of if you are being unsafe and what that financially might cost you. And then finally, we looked at car insurance and how that is generally calculated, the general idea, not the specific calculations, because that changes depending on the company. And then how you can improve your rate so that you get a lower rate. In lesson 14, we looked at new and used vehicles. We talked about the benefits of new cars and the drawbacks, specifically looking at depreciation, which is how fast your vehicle loses value. When you have a new vehicle, it is very fast. And we talked about used cars and what the costs are associated in buying a used car. In lesson 15, we looked at leasing vehicles, the pros and cons of leasing a vehicle, focusing also on kilometer usage surcharge. So if you go over the kilometer usage that you were agreed upon, that you're going to have to pay a fee. And then we talked about the fine print, how it's really good, important to be paying very close attention to the information that is in your contract. All right, so then moving on to unit 4. In lesson 16, we looked at vehicle costs. So all users, general users, have these costs like gas, maintenance, repairs, insurance. And some of these costs are monthly and yearly. So you need to be budgeting carefully with these sorts of things so that you know you don't have any surprises. It's really difficult to, when you realize that, oh, you have to change on your winter tires, and oh, you need new winter tires this year, and you haven't been planning for it. So now all of a sudden you're out $1,000 that you didn't expect to be out. We talked about fuel efficiency and how that is measured in liters per 100 kilometers in Canada. And the lower the number, the more efficient, which means that you go a further distance on less gas. Then we talked about the cost of fuel and how in Canada it is in dollars per liter. And if you're trying to figure out how much it might cost you to travel someplace, you need to calculate both the fuel consumption, so how much fuel you actually are going to use in that distance, which is based on your fuel efficiency, and then the actual cost of the fuel based on how much fuel you used. In lesson 17, we looked at traveling distances. So we estimated distances on paper maps. We used the scale that's provided and also the given distances, so that can give us that information. Then we estimated distances using technology. Particularly, we looked at the Google Maps direction feature, which is one of the most common ways of using tech to estimate distances. And we talked about how travel time in bad weather changes. So generally, you need to slow down. It's going to take you longer to do things if the weather is bad, whether or not this is rain, snow, freezing rain, blizzard, just at night. So decreased visibility. Generally, you need to slow down. In lesson 18, we planned a trip. So we talked about how you need to calculate your gas. So you need to know both your travel distance and then your fuel consumption and the cost. We talked about accommodations and how you need to not forget the tax for the specific location. So if you are booking a hotel in BC, that's going to cost different than if you're in Alberta compared to if you were in Ontario compared to if you're in PEI. So you need to pay attention to the tax. For meals, we talked about how you can sort of have a plan for like a breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. You can think, okay, I'm going to have $7 for breakfast and $10 for lunch and $20 for dinner and an extra $10 for snacks every day. Or you can just say, okay, I'm going to spend $25 per day on food, or $30 or $50 or whatever makes sense for you per person. And then we talked about how you want to plan for entertainment costs. So the admission costs for getting into places like zoos or aquariums, or going to a play or a movie or a concert or something like that, that there's cost of admissions, and then also cost of souvenirs. So if you're going to buy something to commemorate that experience, there's going to be a cost. You're going to want money to spend to shop. So just to plan that if you're planning a trip. In lesson 19, we talked about reading charts and schedules. So lesson 18 was focused mainly on a road trip. But in 19, you are looking at different modes of transportation. So we looked at buses, trains, and planes. The things that we want to consider are the schedules. So paying attention to the departure and arrival times, that they might be in 24-hour clocks and there are local times. So that might be different than your time. It can be really challenging here to look out if you drive to Thunder Bay to catch a flight, because their time change happens between here and Thunder Bay. And so when it says that it's going to be a 1 o'clock flight, that's actually 12 o'clock in Central Time. So you need to plan for that time when you're driving to Thunder Bay. So you want to just be being wary of that. Then also consider stops, transfers, layovers, and how long your flight's going to be, the duration. All just things to be paying attention to. In lesson 20, we wrapped up with modes of transportation by looking at public transportation and how the fares can be different depending on where you are and generally your age. There are various methods of transportation. So most places have buses, some places have streetcars or trains, subways. So knowing how to use those different methods, where you need to find them, how you can pay for them, is all important. And there are pros and cons to public transportation as a system as a whole, as well as particular individual systems. Remember, the internet's your friend. In terms of if you're going someplace that has a public transportation system that you want to use, check it out on the internet before you go. Then we talked about car rentals, that you need a driver's license and a credit card. Your age matters. If you are over the age of 25, your rates are going to be lower than if you're under the age of 25. You want to watch out for extras. They might not be worth it. They might be. You need to decide depending on your situation and your needs. You want to be paying attention to unlimited versus limited kilometers. So just so you know, if you only have a certain amount of time, distance that you can drive, pay attention. And you want to be aware of your fuel and damage fees so that, I mean, it's best to just fill up and to not damage the vehicle. But if anything happens, knowing what fees you might have to pay. And that wraps up all of our review in terms of running through what we've learned. We've learned a lot. We've talked about a lot of different subjects within this math course. So we've covered a lot. Now we're going to finish today with doing some mixed practice, where we're going to look to see if we can figure out the types of questions that we're answering and actually answer them. Some review from the whole course. So number one, here's the part of Ryan's passbook that shows his transactions in May. When did Ryan get paid? So because we're looking at a passbook, we're looking at banking transactions. That is what's happening in this question. So we look in our passbook. When did Ryan get paid? So we want to look to see. And here I want to deposit. So because that's money coming in, and here it says pay CD World 260, and that's an electronic transfer. So so Ryan got paid on May 21st because that is when money went into his account. What transaction did he make on May 9th and May 28th? So on May 9th, he made an ATM withdrawal. He took out $30 in cash. On May 28th, a check withdrawal. So a check went through his account for $50. Check cleared. So he had given somebody a check for $50, and now it had finally gone through saying yes, that he actually has that money and has taken the money out. Explain how the amounts in the balance column are calculated. So here at the balance column, we can see it started at 126.98, and then so how that works is that $30, this is what we're left with after that $30. So then we took out 20, paid debit, he paid something for 22.78. So that means that after he paid 22.78, he was left with 104.20. Then he had a deposit of 260, so it went up to 364.20. That's added. $260 has been added. So the balance is how much money Ryan has after the transaction. So if you're withdrawing things, you take things away, you take money away. If you're depositing things, you add money. All right, number 2. Best Car Rentals charges $125 per week with a 4 cents charge per kilometer. And We Heart Rentals charges $59 per week with a 25 cents charge per kilometer. When would each company be the better option? So if you Best Car Rentals, this one you're not really going to calculate anything. You're just going to think logically. So Best Car, if you are traveling a lot of kilometers, this is the best option because you get charged a very low fee per kilometer in comparison to the other one. But the We Heart Rentals, it's best to use when you need many weeks, so a long time, because it has a lower weekly rate, where the Best Car Rentals has a lower kilometer rate. And this is a car rental question. All right, number 3. You borrowed $5,000 and will pay it back with compound interest after 3 years. How much interest do you pay if the rate is 4.8% compounded monthly? So this is a compound interest question. Because it says compound interest. That's how I know. So I'm going to use my formula. A equals P times 1 plus R over N, the exponent NT. Remember, you do not need to have this memorized. You can look it up. That's fine. I have memorized. I've done it enough times, but you don't have to. So the principal is 5,000. The rate is 4.8%, which means 0.048 in a decimal. The N, your number of compounding periods, well, it's monthly. So that means 12. And your T is 3 years. So it's already in years. So we just say it's 3. So then we put these into our formula. So 5,000 times 1 plus 0.048 divided by 12, all to the exponent 12 times 3. And we're going to use our Desmos to calculate this. And make sure, as always, that your calculator is doing what you want it to do. Depending on your calculator, you might need to put that in differently. Just in terms of how you press the buttons. So you need to get to know your calculator well. So the total amount is $5,772.76. So now we need to check how we answered the question. How much interest do you pay? So no, this is the total amount. So to find the interest, we need to do the amount, take away the principal. So $5,772.76, take away 5,000 is equal to $772.76. So therefore, you pay $772.76 in interest. There we go. Number 4, when going on road trip, what might be some financial surprises? So this is one of those questions where there's no perfectly right answer. You need to justify your reasoning. So you might have car trouble and need repairs. Sorry, you might have your accommodations might be overbooked and you might be bumped. And you have to find somewhere else. This happened to me twice in the past year. You might have to pay different taxes. Sales taxes. And that might be a surprise. And again, there might be other things that you think of. These are just a few things that I've thought of in this moment. But with this type of question, there isn't a perfect answer. These are not the things that I want you to memorize. I just want you to think logically what might be some surprises that happen you might have experienced and to explain about them. That's like a planning trip question. All right, number 5, estimate the cost of buying a computer in the following 3 situations. Which is the best buy? So we have Winnipeg Tech, which is $497.45, and we need to calculate PST and GST. So far we know that this is a best buy question. Now it is a sales tax question too. Then T-Bay Computers, it's $535 plus HST. Okay, that's also sales tax. And then US Deals Online, which is $325 plus a $35 delivery fee with no tax, but a conversion from US dollars to Canadian dollars. So this is a US to Canadian dollars question. So there's a lot going on in this question. So for Winnipeg Tech, we remember that GST is 5% everywhere that has GST in Ontario and Canada, sorry. So that means that it's a total of 12% tax. So to figure out the cost of this, we're going to do $497.45. And we're going to times it this time because we have so many steps. We're going to times it by 1.12. So this is going to tell us the total cost, including the tax. Remember, there are different ways to calculate tax, and you can do what makes the most sense for you. You don't have to do it just the same way that I do it. You can do it where you find the tax first and then add it. Totally fine. For the sake of time, I'm doing this way. So in total, it's going to be $557.14. Okay, so at Winnipeg Tech, that's how much you're going to buy a computer. In Thunder Bay, you're going to do Thunder Bay's Ontario, so it's 13%. So you do $535 times, again, we're going to do 1.13 to figure out the total cost. 535 times 1.13 gives us $604.55. And in the US one, so the cost is $325 plus 35. So that's $360. And then we need to convert, but that's $360 US dollars, right? So we need to convert that from US dollars to Canadian dollars. So how we figure that out, remember, is that what we want to find, we put on the top. So we want to figure out how many Canadian dollars is equivalent to 360 US dollars. So that means that we put 1.27 Canadian dollars over 1 US dollars. And then we cross multiply. So X times 1 is X. And then we do 360 times 127. We're just using the rate that I gave us. Remember that this changes every day. So 360 times $1.27 is equal to $457.20 in Canadian dollars. So then we look and we see what are our best options. So even with the conversion rate, Right now, it is best to buy it online. It's cheapest. To buy it online from the States. So there we go. Number 6, where is this person traveling to and from? Why does it take so long? Okay, so this is a scheduled question. So this person is traveling. Where is this person traveling to and from? So we can see they are traveling. They're starting in St. John's International Airport. So this is St. John's, Newfoundland. And they are ending in, so we look and we see we're ending in Thunder Bay, Ontario. So we start at 8:45 a.m. and we end at 11:02 p.m. So it takes so long because there are layovers in Halifax, Ottawa, and Toronto. So not only are you stopping in those places, you're stopping there for a long time. So that adds to your travel day. All right, number 7. Car A has a gas tank that is 48 liters big and can travel 270 kilometers on one tank. Car B has a gas tank that is 55 liters big and can travel 690 kilometers on one tank. Which car has a better fuel economy? So this is a fuel economy question. But we're trying to figure it out. Instead of interpreting it, we're trying to figure out what the fuel economy is. So remember, that is fuel economy is liters per 100 kilometers. So what for car A, we're going to say, okay, 48 liters per 720 kilometers is equal to how many liters, unknown, per 100 kilometers. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. You can do, first, you can just figure out 48 liters per 1 kilometer. So 48 divided by 720 is equal to 0.0667 liters per 1 kilometer. Yes. So then you can times that by 100 to figure out that it's 6.67 for 100 kilometers. So 6.67 liters per 100 kilometers for car A. For car B, it is 55 liters per 690 kilometers is equal to, or unknown, for 100 kilometers. So you could here, instead, you could multiply both sides by 100 and you could do 55 times 100 divided by 690. You could do it that way too. You could do the multiplication first. Either way is fine. So that's 5,500, and then divide that by 690, and we get 7.97. So that's 7.97 liters per 100 kilometers. So car A has a better fuel economy because it's lower. And question 8 refers to the amortization schedule for Alexis's car loan. How many years is it going to pay for the car loan? So we look and we see the length of the loan in years is 3. How much will the car have cost them? So it's going to be the amount of the loan. You do 3 times 12 because monthly payments times your actual loan payment, which is $764.50, and that tells us how much it actually is. How often are the payments made? Monthly. And what you notice about the portion of each payment that is interest, as more payments are made, what about the principal portion? So the interest is less the more payments made, and the principal is more. At the beginning, you pay mostly interest. At the end, you pay mostly principal. All right, and that wraps up that. So we have now completed all of the course materials. You can submit all of your lessons 1 through 20 for marking. Remember, do all the key questions and show all your work. Your culminating activity is open book, and it covers all the material. There's multiple parts that build on each other, so you need to show your full work for your marks, and you need to give yourself time. This is not something that you can do really quick. If you have any questions about any of our material or setting up the culminating activity, please reach out and contact me. You can call me at 807-737-1488, extension 2209, or toll free 1-800-667-3703. You can email me at bronwyn.slate, and that's spelled BRONWYN.SLATE@nnec.on.ca. Connect with me through Facebook at B-Slate Wahsa, and know all of our lessons are up on YouTube for my channels, also called B-Slate Wahsa, and all of our classes are under MEL3E. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you have a lovely day. Which